Who are you guys?
Let's see where nightmares go to nest.
True Metal Warriors subscribe to Geek Legion of Doom.
Philip J. Cook writes and directs Echoes of Dread, a 2026 low-budget cosmic horror movie which is kind of a follow-on to a 2001 movie called Despiser. Now, this isn't a sequel as such, it's more of a taking place in the same universe, but with some kind of crossover. So you don't need to have seen Despiser to watch this, because it is its own thing with its own characters. But if you have seen it, there is a kind of connective tissue there. So the story of this one primarily focuses on kind of two Gen Z YouTubers. And they do a kind of like paranormal, strange discoveries style channel. And they're due to meet this historian who has kind of discovered something. But they discover he's actually dead. Because he has found some video of some old footage back from, I think it's 1908, they say, from Russia. In 1908, some old kind of archival footage that kind of shows something strange. Now, they managed to track down this footage, and it shows, 1908 in Russia with a kind of this old kind of Russian town being attacked by some type of monsters, some type of creatures, possibly alien, possibly demonic, possibly another dimension, but a variety of different creatures. But that's not the only problem, because now they have watched this footage, it somehow has an effect where once you have seen this footage, you are kind of then infected with a sort of seed almost, which then kind of grows and you expel like a little creature. And they basically put this, unwittingly put this kind of footage out on YouTube, and thus kind of, spreading the kind of the curse, so to speak. And now they have to team up with two other guys who kind of know a bit more about what's kind of going on to try and stop this otherworldly menace. So that's your plot premise. Let's discuss. Now, this is a low budget movie. Quite often with low budget movies, you see a film that tries to stick within its kind of budget to and not be particularly ambitious. This one's like, hold my beer. I'm going to kind of just go all out, because this movie is super ambitious and has a lot of kind of scope, effects, monsters. It is done through a low budget lens. So if you're a fan of big movies, you don't mind kind of the lower budget production value and effects and things like that, you'll enjoy it. But if you are put off by rough around the edges, cheaper looking production value, etc., just watch mainstream films, maybe this won't be for you. But let me just go into a little bit more context and detail about what I liked about this movie. So, first of all, I found the tone of this movie quite interesting. Because although it's kind of a kind of cosmic horror sci-fi, I guess, it has a sort of comedic edge to it. Which I kind of wasn't really expecting, because when it initially starts, you don't feel like it's going to have that. But our two YouTubers are kind of like these ADHD types who are constantly sort of hyperactive and sort of goofy. And their sort of interactions and stuff give the movie a kind of a certain amount of energy. Now, it might sound like, ugh, ADHD Gen Zs, that sounds horrible. But I actually think it does the movie a favour to a point, because it just gives it this kind of like more high energy that I think otherwise, had they played it more straight and kind of not because it's a little bit sort of silly sometimes, and I think this, it's not an out-and-out comedy, but a slightly kind of comedic edge almost gives it a kind of like, well, it's a kind of like a bit more self-aware B-movie in some respects. Because, we have these characters still in peril, still kind of going through, a plot, but they are kind of like goofs at this kind of the same time, and sort of have these kind of little comedic like line deliveries and kind of pieces of dialogue and kind of interactions and things like that. So it kind of gives it a little bit more of that a sort of a fun vibe, a little bit more of a kind of energy, had they just kind of played it kind of straight and albeit a little bit more boring. So I found that quite refreshing in a way, and they managed to become somewhat sort of comedic without really becoming annoying. I didn't find our young characters like irritating, to be honest. I actually thought they came across as like, for example, they had these kind of over the top personalities, but that's their sort of personalities. It's not like it's put on for their show or whatever. You just feel like this is what they're like, and so it has a degree of authenticity in regards to their presentation, which I kind of quite like. So I sort of quite liked it, and they even have these. They end up teaming up these two other older guys, and I even quite like some of their interactions. That sort of generational gap. That sort of thing. So I sort of quite enjoyed the tone here of this, like almost like a Ghostbuster-esque kind of style, sort of irreverent sort of humour. I mean, it's not like as funny as Ghostbusters, don't get me wrong, but I still quite enjoyed that sort of that camaraderie that I think this movie does get across, and those kind of little kind of just like interactions here and there, throwaway bits of dialogue where I think the movie which kind of helps the movie. Anyway, so the plot is quite ambitious, as I've kind of said. So, we have, quite an in-depth plot in regards to, I mean, it's not like twists and turns necessarily, but certainly for a kind of a lower budget movie, it's not just kids running around in the woods. There is a kind of degree of, of stakes and having to do kind of certain things to kind of get to a certain end, etc. So I found the plot to be, somewhat engaging in regards to, where it's going narratively. I was surprised at the level of different things that are happening in the movie on a kind of a VFX level. Now, we're going to talk about the VFX again. But I got to say, I think some of the kind of the VFX are pretty interesting. And they used a variety of methods here. Some of which are kind of like your lower budget sort of CGI effects. Some of which are AI. Now, I'm not going to tell you if you should like AI or not. That is up to you. I personally do not mind it, and I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about AI in future videos, because I suspect many low budget movies, are going to incorporate AI into film production. And there's always going to be the AI slop type comments. I get that, and you're totally fine if that's the way you feel about it. I personally, I think it's a good tool for filmmakers to use to do otherwise quite complex shots. And some of these shots, it's particularly when we can see the archival footage of this kind of what's happening in Russia. You see these kind of demonic creatures, looking menacing behind this kind of misty Soviet army and things like this. I thought it was, it was quite good. I thought it was quite effective. And there's some pretty interesting sort of, ideas for some VFX. AI is a little mixed in regards to its presentation. I'm not talking about the ethical issues here, just how it is, and we're not quite there yet. In regards to making a kind of a seamless transition. And as I said, there are other effects used here as well, more traditional kind of style CGI and practical sets and location shooting and everything like that. So it's a kind of a mix of different styles, but AI is in it. Up to you if that's a problem for you or not. I don't mind it in regards to these low budget films that are using it to kind of like do more complex VFX shots. And I quite like some of the kind of the the designs here, the ideas that they're kind of incorporating. And again, it's a very ambitious movie. And, you know, it's not long. Some work better than others. There's a scene where there's like a kind of a little, like a lake or a stream or something, and there's a crab thing in there, and it spawns off into loads of little crabs, and they all kind of run after you. That you know, looked genuinely pretty effective and stuff. And as I say, this kind of old archival footage as well looks good. I think it was that looks like real creepy. We're not there yet. We're not quite there yet in having these kind of seamless effects, but again, a lower budget movie and everything like that. So, you know, the movie's kind of quite well paced. I think it's quite kind of action heavy. There's lots of kind of like different sort of things happening on screen, and it never kind of slows down for too long. I like the kind of characters. I thought we follow our four main characters, and I thought they do a good job in regards to making you like the characters. They all seem kind of quite, you know, fun and interesting sort of characters in that. So this movie, if you don't mind a lower budget, I think has a lot to enjoy. What doesn't work, I mean, like, I'm not going to harp on about it too much, but if you're not a fan of things with AI, this isn't going to change your mind, I don't think. And as I say, I do think maybe there were some shots here that were done through AI that probably could have been done, you know, other methods perhaps. But and the AI is a mixed bag in regards to how good it looks. And it is a low budget film, even the stuff that isn't AI. Again, it has a low budget quality to it. So this movie, if you're not a fan of B movies or low budget films, it's not going to kind of change your mind. So there's that. Outside of that, I think some of the dialogue is a little bit on the sort of on the nose at times. It kind of sounds like it's dialogue written on a script rather than a kind of a natural conversation. And I think it's sometimes our actors as well aren't the most naturalistic sounding in delivering it. I think their characters are still likable, but I do not think necessarily the actors are particularly dramatic or kind of like, or realistic at times. Some of the kind of the dialogue, as I say, I think the way it's actually written is a little bit, sounds like written dialogue. And then, as I said, the actor's performance of it sometimes is a little lacking, it must be said. So there is that. I think the movie itself, its kind of comedic tone, although I do think it works in regards to making it a fun kind of romp, I guess. At the same time, it kind of makes it feel a little too silly at times. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I think it works. It helps this movie more than it doesn't. But I will say I think sometimes this movie feels like it should be more dramatic and should have a little bit more a weight to it. And instead some of the kind of the humour is a little bit sort of misjudged at times and feels like it should be, it's a little light at times where it should be a little bit more, have a bit more gravitas to it. I think some of the VFX, going back to the VFX slightly, are a little over-designed and a little bit sort of like too over the top at times, and this maybe is a danger with AI. For example, there's we go in this kind of tunnel system, and there's like a mouth on the wall where it's almost like a kind of a prison. It seemed a little bit over the top to me, you know. So yes, you can pretty much do whatever you want with AI, I guess, but sometimes I think restraint might be in order. It's, you know, I think for the most part, as I say, I genuinely kind of quite like the ambition with the kind of the VFX, but there are times here I think maybe restraint would have been the better option. Now, should you watch this movie, I gotta say I found this movie quite fun. It has a certain charm to it. The characters are likable. The plot, if this was a higher budget movie, you know, the plot here you could imagine being in a sort of a higher, more mainstream kind of film in some respects, because I think the plot is, the pacing of it, what happens, the kind of the sequences, you can okay, if that had more money behind it, you could see it in a more of high profile movie. I'm not sure it would be a blockbuster or anything like that, but certainly you can kind of see the the path here where had this had more money in it, it could potentially be a little bit more of a higher profile film. Overall, it's a fun movie. It's not perfect. It's certainly a kind of a movie that I think is going to be divisive depending on your thoughts on AI. I'm going to leave that up to you. I said I don't mind it. To me, it's just a tool that people use. It's not quite there yet, but overall, it's a fun movie more than it isn't. I like the characters. I had kind of a pretty good time with it. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Generally speaking, if you're a B-movie fan, you may want to check it out. What are your thoughts? Have you seen it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Damn it. No, I do not look like Leo from Geek Legion of Doom, people.